All right, so part 5 is about polishing. And there's a couple of key things. If you're up to this stage, what it means is you've written your essay, you've written your introduction, your paragraphs, and your conclusion. And now you're kind of at a point where you're really looking to make sure you're getting the best product possible. Okay, not everyone's necessarily going to get to this point, but not everyone's necessarily going to get an A or or even a B for this assignment. It depends where you are, but if you've made it this far, it shows that you're actually ready to take your work to the next level. Okay, so this is an important stage. To really reinforce what we're doing here, nothing of any worth or merit ignores the importance of polishing. Okay, and ironically, you can see there's a couple of typos in my work, which I apologize for, but it just goes to show, like, for an article or a book to be published, it is typically drafted and edited up to 10 times in the professional world. You know, both of my books that have been published were drafted 6 or 7 times each, with quite significant changes. Okay, if you're writing an article to go into a magazine or into a journal, you know, it can be edited and edited and edited, and it's because a good writer knows that you don't just write a good article kind of straight off the top of your head. Okay, you need to go back and look at it, and that's what this is all about. Okay, the aim of what we're really looking to do here is to eliminate typos and mistakes. Okay, you know, typos are they're just messy. You know, it's like making a spelling mistake. If you're looking to come across as a professional, if you want your work to come across as professional, then you want to eliminate those. And the easiest way to do that is just to make sure you read through your work, read through carefully, read through with confidence, read it out loud and get other people to read it out loud to you. Okay, it's amazing how many things you catch if you just do that. You do want to improve the clarity and vocabulary. As you're going along, you know, when you read things, you ask yourself questions like, could I have said this more clearly? Or am I repeating this kind of language? Often when you've written sections individually and then you put them together, you notice that you've used a lot of the same language. So reading it together and looking at it as a whole piece gives you that opportunity to really change up your language. And of course, the goal of this is all to increase the professionalism of your writing. It's to make you stand out, and that's what this is all about. So we're talking about nominalisation here. You know, in terms of looking for typos and reading out loud, I'll let you do that on your own. I want to take you through this process of nominalisation, which is something you are being specifically assessed on in this task. Okay, now we've been working on it for quite a bit. So I'm not going to define what it is. I'm not going to explain to you in heaps of detail, but just to remind you, it's about changing verbs, which are doing words, into nouns. So rather than saying the word reduce, we're saying the word reduction. Okay, so we would say it's a reduction of something rather than we should reduce something. In the same way, discover becomes discovery. And you know, if you go back through your notes for the past term, we've done so much of this work. Okay, so now's your time to figure out whether you're going to sink or swim. Do you actually know this stuff? All right. Why do we do it? Well, again, it looks at creating balance and clarity. It increases the professionalism of our writing, and it allows us to expand our vocabulary. Okay, so that's a really important thing as well. Okay, it makes our writing more sophisticated, more professional and intelligent, and it gives us an opportunity to make sure we're not repeating ourselves as well. Okay, so that's why it's important. That's why we teach you to do it. A bit of a warning here though, it can be overdone. You know, I don't want you to actually nominalize every single verb. Otherwise, I guarantee you it will sound weird and it just won't work. Part of being a good writer is using your own judgment and intuition to improve the writing where you think it is possible. Okay, so I do want to say to you the fact that nominalisation is a great tool. It adds to the professionalism of your writing, but if it's overused, if you try and nominalise everything, what you're going to find is that it all becomes a big mess. Okay, and that's not what I want from you. What you're going to see in my example is how I make some clever choices about the wording of certain sections in a paragraph, and just kind of what the effect of that is in the professionalism of my writing. So for this, I'm going to be using this a different paragraph to what I've used in the other videos. The difference is I've brought in a higher standard of writing than I did in the other videos. The other videos just tried to give you a basic outline of all the different sections of a paragraph, but there were a couple of things that would have held back the marks of that one. And if you've up to this video, hopefully you've figured that out. Otherwise, you're welcome to go back and change it. But one of the things, for example, is you're marked on the number of quotes that you can incorporate into your writing. If you had 2 quotes, you get a B, which means you had to get 3 or more quotes into your paragraph and discussion in order to get an A for that skill. So you'll notice that this different paragraph has 3 quotes, whereas the other one only had 2. I'll read this to you really quickly. One of the themes in the poem is about accepting people who are different. The poet shows this theme by using the technique of metaphor in order to show how we often neglect people who are different rather than show them respect. In the poem, the line, "Falling softly at our feet, their fears and cries now go unheard," demonstrates how when people are in need of support, they call out, but our society ignores them. This is further reinforced in the line, "The masks of men deny their call," which was written to show that people are not supposed to ignore people, but to show care for them instead. As mentioned in the line, we were made for more and care to show. For the reader, this poem demonstrates that in our society, we need to look out for people who are in need and to help them when we can. The poet suggests that humans are not made to be cruel, but instead should show compassion and understanding to others. And here we have shown how the theme of accepting people who are different has been shown in this text. Okay, so a fairly detailed and complex paragraph, but hopefully you can see my ideal structure. So I'm going to do some nominalisation here. Now, the first thing you know about nominalisation is it's about nominalising verbs. If I go through and I highlight all the verbs in red, you'll notice there's quite a lot of them, okay? I can tell you straight away, I am not going to nominalise all of these verbs at the same time, okay? It'll be too messy. And I'm going to communicate a couple of rules to you to help you filter them out, okay? So, the basic thing is you're not going to nominalise all of these verbs, okay? That would be a mistake, okay? I'm only going to pick a handful of them. I'm going to show you how I do it. So let's eliminate some. Let me take you to a bit of some clarification. So first and foremost, when we're analysing, we don't generally change verbs that relate to the actions of the poet or the writer. So if we're saying the poet shows something, or we have shown something, or the poet uses something, or here we've discussed, or here we've demonstrated, or this poem demonstrates, we usually don't change any of those verbs, okay? So any of those verbs that were in the original one that I looked at, I'm going to change the colour of later on to show you how I discard them. Another big thing is that we tend to focus mostly, the ones that we do change are verbs that relate to clarifying ideas and content, okay? So if I'm talking about a theme, or if I'm talking about an action that someone performs, those are the most likely ones that I'm going to change. Something else to remember as well is if you do go back and you noticed, because I just highlighted all of the verbs, I included the ones that were in the actual poem itself. You can't change anything that's in direct quotes from the text, okay? So you can't change that. Whenever you bring in a direct quote, the assumption is that it is exactly the way that it would have been in the poem, okay? So all of those I'm going to change the color of, all right? So if you look here, this is that same thing again, but you'll notice that now more than half of the original things that I highlighted as verbs have been changed to blue. And the reason I did that is just to show you that the blue ones are ones I'm not going to touch, okay? Because they fall into those 3 rules that I discussed just before. So that leaves me with much less to look at. Now, I'm not going to take you through the nominalisation of every single thing that I do. Instead, I'm going to leave that to you. I'm assuming that you have the skills and the understanding based on the practice we've done in class to do this well. What I will do, however, is I'll show you the change that I have made to this paragraph, and I've actually highlighted in my paragraph where that's happened. Okay, so I change here. So here's my final product. Now, you're welcome to pause this or to go back to the other one and pause it and even try it yourself if you want. But the red represents where I have made a nominalized change, okay? Let me reinforce, I did not change everything, but I did change some things. And I hope that you'll notice that the consequent professionalism and polish of my writing is much better. So let me read this to you. One of the themes in the poem is the acceptance of others. The poet shows this theme through the use of metaphor in order to show how differences are often met with negligence rather than respect. In the poem, the line "falling softly at our feet, their fears and cries now go unheard" demonstrates how the need for support is often met by social ignorance. This is further reinforced in the line "the masks of men deny their call," which was written to show that for humans, compassion rather than ignorance better defines our nature. As mentioned in the line, "we were made for more and care to show." For the reader, this poem demonstrates that in our society we need to recognise need through the provision of help and support. The poet suggests that humans are not defined by cruelty, but instead in our ability to show compassion and understanding to others. Here we have shown how the acceptance of differences has been shown as a critical theme in this text. Okay, hopefully you can see the difference of just how making a few changes to the wording and vocabulary and structure of my paragraph, I've increased the professionalism and polish of it. I really want you to give this a go. You are being marked in this assignment on your use of normalisation, so you should be at least attempting it. Okay, if I'm seeing 1 or 2 attempts over the entire essay, you get yourself a C. Okay, if I'm seeing, consistent attempts, like 1 or 2 different attempts in each paragraph, you get yourself a B. If you're at this level where you are regularly and consistently normalizing your language in an appropriate manner, you get an A for that skill. So I hope you'll really rise to this challenge. It's not the kind of thing that will necessarily be done in 10 seconds. Spend a bit of time on it, put a bit of thought into it, and make sure you get someone to have a read over it before you submit it. Good luck.